You ladies and gentlemen of the press have been less than honest reporting to the American people what's going on in this country.
The baby's out of incubator.
We're dealing with Hitler revisited.
This is the Scott Horton Show. Libertarian foreign policy, mostly.
When the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
We're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years.
They don't know what the they're doing.
Negotiate now. End this war.
And now, here's your host, Scott Horton.
All right, y'all. Welcome to the show, the Scott Horton Show. I'm him, and we got a big announcement for you today. It's the, second full day now of the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom at scotthortonacademy.com. You can go and sign up there, and we've got early bird specials, which are probably expired by the time anybody sees this. Not sure, but probably Saturday night. Anyway, head on over there and sign up for the Academy. It's long-form courses by myself, the great James Bovard, Ramsey Baroud. Well, let me say myself on the war on terrorism, James Bovard on 40 years of investigative journalism, Ramsey Baroud on the reality of the Israel-Palestine conflict, and today's guest, one of today's guests, the great Bill Buppert, former Army officer and historian and critic of American, especially counterinsurgency policy, but also essentially all American militarism and its follies. Welcome to the show. How you doing, Bill?
Hey, I'm doing great. And I wanted to, for the audience that's watching right now, we are in the process of moving because normally my very large library, like Scott's, is filled with books, but I've been packing and getting ready to move the bunker complex from here to elsewhere in the great state of Florida.
Okay. Well, dang, I was about to say, are you coming to Texas? Not yet.
I can't. The property taxes in Texas are just prohibitive.
That's true. But we have no income tax.
You don't, but it doesn't balance out. Florida is a very low tax state overall. So
but it's
more attractive in so many ways.
Yeah, right. I feel you.
Yeah.
I hate Florida. I mean, it's okay to visit, but there's no hills or anything. It's weird.
But
Anyway,
up in the Panhandle, they do have an altitude elevation max of almost 250 feet.
oh, okay. There you go. See what? I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, you got to go to the Panhandle, Horton.
You need to come visit, Scott.
Yeah.
You do.
Listen, let me tell you a thing, man. I've been busting my ass on building this academy up, and part of that meant putting off watching your courses until they were already done and edited and the audio mastered and everything. And then once they're already up on the website and we're a day from launch, I thought, boy, I better watch the other guys' courses and make sure that, I like them. And so I did. And yours is so great. It's a history of American militarism since the end of World War II and all of its stupidity and failures. And I just learned so much from it. I love your podcast. You have 2 very important podcasts, War Notes and Chasing Ghosts, both of which we feature, of course, at the Libertarian Institute as well. But I'm so grateful for you doing this course and being part of the academy with me here and the rest, because I get to brag and boast like somehow I'm responsible for all of y'all's hard work too. And like, hey, everybody, check out the awesome academy I have. It's not just me, but it's these other real greats too. And the likes of you and Ramsey Baroud and James Bovard that I can really brag and boast about. So thank you. And why don't you tell the people a little bit about the course?
So you're very kind, Scott, and you and I have a very symbiotic relationship when it comes to this, because I have the intellectual curiosity, I think maybe on par with yours, and it is inspiration from having listened to you since the early 2000s that sort of led me down the path where I am so skeptical and hypercritical of the American and by extension Western martial effort that's going on around the world. Sorry about that. Martial effort that's going on around the world, especially since the end of World War II. I'm fond of calling World War II the war to save Joseph Stalin for a variety of reasons. And as a matter of fact, that could be a future course offering at the Academy to provide an explanatory framework on why. Thank you, Prof. CJ, who is doing a wonderful series on Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson is patient zero for all of this. World War I and that Austrian painter who became the chancellor and then the dictator of Nazi Germany and set so many things into train in the first half of the 20th century, all of that could have been stopped cold if American decision-making in World War I and World War II had taken a different path. Because essentially what World War II did was it made the world safe for communist expansion and domination hemispherically around the world. So when Scott asked me to do this course, I gave him a laundry list of various courses I could do. We settled on this one. And what it's all about is that since 1945 to present day, especially because of the intelligence community, and especially because of this curious industrial policy that we have that's very socialist and communistic oriented in the Department of Defense, Department of War now, in acquiring these elegant, exquisite, and very expensive weapon systems, it's become a self-licking ice cream cone to such an extent that, to sum it up, America has the finest and most expensive military in history, fit for 20th century peer combat, that is not fit for purpose for 21st century peer combat. And all the trillions of dollars that we have spent, all the mismanagement, all these wars that we have consistently lost or reached a stalemate in, everything comes home because, Newton's third law is a stone cold motherfracker. And it comes around, and certainly it's a law of physics, but it's also a law of human transaction and behavior. Because every time, and this is something that I've emphasized in the course, and again, maybe in a future course, Scott, I can tease this out. Every larger conflict breathes oxygen into the embers of long dormant conflicts, leading to interstate wars, wars of domination within state or national borders, or maybe secession or balkanization or nullification urges are satisfied. Whenever wars are created, they birth new wars in the future. And unfortunately, since 1945 to this present day, I did this course where I talked about the mishaps, the failures, the stalemates, the misadventures of the U.S. military. We are living right now militarily, as an amateur military historian, we are living in a time of amazing prosperity and peace, relatively speaking, because war, unfortunately, is the way of the world. And you gave me the opportunity with this course to sort of suss out and tease out all of these things that cause this existential cavalcade of calamities that is the U.S. military institution.
Well, I'm sure glad you took the opportunity to do it. I learned so much. And
okay, so Scott, I need to say this though.
Yeah,
it is the highest praise. And my oldest daughter said this to me. She is 34 now, 35. She's 35. She said it. Scott Horton is the bomb. And
your daughter said that about me?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Look, I have 3 sons, 2 daughters, 7 grandchildren. My youngest daughter she's not into this at all, but my 3 sons and my oldest daughter are all fanboys of the Scott Horton phenomenon. And what you've been doing, they've been listening to you for a long time. They grew up with it, sort of. And we home educated, remember? So I exposed them to the right history and they have that. But she said, he's amazing. So Scott, when you tell me that
you
learned something from me, I'm amazed.
Yeah. Oh, well, geez, I don't know what to say. I've been reading you for 20 years or something, back when you were writing at those other sites and things. So for LRC and whatever. So anyway,
I was excommunicated from LRC.
Yeah. Well, that's not hard to do. You and many other people, some for good reasons and some for less good. But we love Lou. Yes, and so the audience understands. You and me, we like each other. That's great. But your expertise, can you tell us a little bit about your Army career and how you know so much and are so interested in all this military history and all that kind of thing?
I can. So I'm a high school dropout. I went into the U.S. Navy and signed up at the age of 17. Went to the Navy, spent 7 years enlisted, got out, went to college, stayed in the reserves, got my commission in the U.S. Army as an officer to avoid sea duty. And then I spent time as both an infantryman and an intelligence officer. And I was assigned to airborne units, air assault units, special operations forces units, special forces units. And then I retired in 2003. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons for my retirement was because we were on the eve of the Iraq War. And because of the Iraq War, I and so many JOs, junior officers, in the U.S. military were so skeptical of what was, we're so skeptical of what was going on in Iraq because the 21 causes belli, and you're well aware of this, that George Bush articulated to go in there were all false. And at the junior officer level, we all knew this, especially those who were in the intelligence community. We saw the writing on the wall well before the press got wind of it, maybe slightly before you did, Scott, and put two and two together. So I got on in 2003, took 4 years to get the let out, started doing some contracting. In 2013 and 2015, I did 2 contractor tours in Afghanistan. So I spent almost 2 years of my life over there. I was an advisor to the general staff in Kabul at the Ministry of Defense in 2013. And in 2015, I was training what's called ANISOC, which is the Afghan National Army Special Operations Command. They have the 5th and 10th Kandaks, which is Afghan for battalion. And I was training commandos and special forces near the Uzbeki border. So all of a sudden, I sort of win the lottery by getting an offer at last from a company in the United States that will go unnamed, who said, "Hey, Bill, you want to come back to the States and make some money that's fairly equivalent to what you're making overseas, and you don't have to deploy anymore." And I took that. So that's my military expertise is not only as a practitioner, but also I would say as a scholar, small s scholar, where like you, I'm a very avid reader. I'm a very interrogating reader, paraphrasing Mortimer Adler, where he said, get involved in your books. And in a topical way, if you read 3 to 5 or more books on the same subject, and this is something you've done, Scott, you start to get an expertise that even university professors who don't take the time to do that can't come close to, where you're starting to make these unconscious connections of what's going on. So I am an amateur military historian. I'm not accredited. I do have a master's degree, probably one of the most curious master's degrees in the U.S. I actually have a master's in asymmetric warfare, which is irregular warfare and such. So as you know, I started Chasing Go 3 years ago, and you are kind enough to host that, along with War Notes, that has a more conventional and global flavor to the things that it tackles. So for me, I'm a citizen journalist like you, in which I take a look at the world, and then with the knowledge that I have, I try to ask myself, well, either is this moral, number one, and if it is, can we do it more effectively? So I think that those 2 questions inform my approach to military and conflict history.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious, what was your master's thesis? Was it, this is all completely bankrupt and stupid, and Petraeus should be cashiered right the hell out of here because he didn't know what he's talking about?
Oh my gosh, Scott, if only I had tackled something that spectacular. My master's thesis was, you're going to be amused by this. Have you heard of Michael Collins?
No. Wait, I don't think so.
So between 1916 and 1922, the Irish were able to wrest the island of Eire, E-I-R-E, Southern Ireland, even though they don't call themselves that, not Northern Ireland. They were able to wrestle themselves out from under an 800-year domination by the English on the Irish Isle. And my thesis was, as a result of World War I and the utter exhaustion of Great Britain financially and militarily, and as a result of what happened in a slaughter in India, where Winston Churchill gave the greatest speech of his life, in my mind, which is the Amritsar speech. I wish that somebody with a creditable English accent would do a reenactment of it. I think it was 1919 or 1920. As a result of that, and Michael Collins' very savvy civil war he was conducting against the English, it was it was a result of his brilliance at irregular warfare at the time, on par in my mind with General Leto Borbeck in East Africa in World War I, and T.E. Lawrence, known as Lawrence of Arabia. Everybody's familiar with that story. I think that they saw the film as a historical, as the film one was, but my number one film of all time, nonetheless. So my thesis was there are ways for smaller people indigenous to a country to defeat the greatest power on earth, in this case, England at the time, where they had suffered under 800 years of domination. So I'm sorry it was so long-winded to tell you.
No, that's great. Well, and now were you being cheeky and you were actually really writing about Iraq and Afghanistan while you were writing that and warning the Americans that who's the redcoats now? You guys are on your way to an obvious and complete and total defeat in both cases here?
You can absolutely draw those conclusions. George Santayana said that history repeats itself. I think riffed and said history rhymes and things like that.
Yeah.
Learning from history, though, and finding historical parallels isn't hard, but if you employ presentism, which is a fallacy in historiography where you say, well, look at us, we're so mighty and moral, maybe woke, not in my case nor your case, but if you were, you take your present moral vantage point and you project that backwards in time and think, well, they should have known better. Well, they couldn't have possibly known better because it wasn't within their moral imagination at the time. I'm so amused, for instance, when people are talking about slavery and how awful it was. Yes, it was awful. And as a matter of fact, before 1800, slavery was the way of the world. And then William Wilberforce, the English Christian gentleman in the UK, stands in the House of Parliament in, I think it's 1801 or 1802. We'll call it at the very beginning of the 19th century, says, owning other human beings is wrong. And then within 2 generations, it is the Royal Navy that's stopping the Atlantic slave trade. It is. So I'm always aghast at the lack of historiosity and accurate historiography today with the reparations talk and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, Scott, I got a lot of useless trivia, and I think that you have a lot of useful trivia, and you're always bantering.
I got a lot of useless trivia too, but go ahead.
So in this case, between 1510 and 1875 in the Atlantic slave trade. I'm not talking about the Islamic slave trade or any of that. The Atlantic slave trade, and there are huge receipts and footnotes for all of this. What percentage of the 12 million plus black slaves that made landfall and were slaves in this hemisphere, what percentage landed in North America? Because Canada is less than 6,000 over the entire period of time.
Yeah.
So it's
I would think it's like 10%, right? Most of it was Brazil and the
exactly. It's 3.5%.
Oh, really?
3.5%, and that's because I think it may be less than, it may be 3% because I think it's 350,000 total came here. Now, by the way, those Islamic slaves were taken for the most part. There's not a big legacy there because the males were castrated when they arrived at the very Islamic Emirates and places like that where they were used in the slave trade. I mean, open slave trades, thank you, Hillary Clinton, reopened after Libya managed to lose Gaddafi.
Yep.
For whatever reason. So, yeah.
Yep. And hey guys, Scott here for Mundo's Artisan Coffees. It's the Scott Horton Show flavored coffee breakfast blend. It's part Ethiopian, part Sumatra. It's really good. All you do is go to scotthorton.org/coffee and it'll forward you on there to Mundo's Artisan Coffees. Get it? They hate Starbucks because they represent the war party, of course. And so they're Mundo's and they support peace. And guess what? Scott Horton Show Coffee is the #1 best-selling coffee at Mundo's Artisan Coffees right now. Just go again to scotthorton.org/coffee. Man, if you have any money, you should be buying gold with it. Central banks are hoarding it up. And if you need some, you should go to rrbi.co. That's Roberts and Roberts Brokerage Inc. It's my buddy Tim Fry. He's a really great guy. Him and this business, they've been over there for a very, very long time. And they will help you get your metals and they will always do you right. That's Roberts and Roberts Brokerage Inc. at rrbi.co. All right, this episode of Scott Horton Show brought to you by the books I wrote. You can see them behind me there. Enough Already, Fool's Errand, and then Enough Already, and Provoked. And then, of course, one might have fallen down there, but I got Ron Paul, the great Ron Paul, Scott Horton Show interviews, and Hotter Than the Sun. You see that one back there, over there, that way. Hotter Than the Sun, Time to Abolish Nuclear Weapons. That's all interviews I did all about nukes, and really great stuff. And I busted my ass on these things, and I've gotten a really great reception on all of them. They were all been endorsed by Ron Paul, and Daniel Ellsberg endorsed 2 of the 3 I wrote. He would have endorsed the 3rd one, I know, but he died too soon, unfortunately. Tucker Carlson says that Provoked is the definitive account. And in fact, that's what Glenn Greenwald and Aaron Maté said about it too. The definitive account of the new Cold War with Russia and the war in Ukraine. So maybe check that out. Hey guys, I have another podcast now, right? Yeah, me and the great American historian Darryl Cooper, that is Martyr Made. He's my co-host, and we host a show every Friday night. We might be switching to 2 days a week here sometime soon, but for right now, we're doing Friday nights live at 8 o'clock Eastern time on the YouTubes. Checked out our Twitter handle, Provoked Show. And, by the way, there's just stories about this a few months ago where, you might have thought that, well, that was back in 2011 and 12 or something. Yeah, no, ever since then, they have chattel slavery. There was a thing that showed all these people being held in shipping containers, being forced, essentially at gunpoint or bayonet point to work. Just straight out of history. And again, yes, absolutely the Democrats' fault over absolute, as they call it, a war of choice that they absolutely did not have to do at all, that they just decided to launch, and in favor of a bunch of jihadists in that Libyan war in 2011. It's unbelievable. Barack Obama should be in prison for that right now.
I agree. And it was Barack Obama who not only sustained, despite his campaign promises, the fight in Afghanistan and Iraq, but he opened new wars in, as you just mentioned, Libya, Syria, the Horn of Africa, and Yemen. And Yemen is very problematic. And what he did, of course, is he came out on the side of the Saudis. And the Saudis, in my mind, for the most part, when it comes to that distinction between Shia and Sunni, the Sunni, of course, are the preponderance of Muslims worldwide. They are ground zero and patient zero for all the funding of Sunni terrorism around the world.
Yeah.
Is the Saudis who are responsible. And of course, Barack Obama and his administration, they do what the Saudis need done.
Yep. It's funny too, because I forget about W. Bush now. I know some of the neocons did, and certainly Obama and Biden, I think Trump too. They all kind of go, oh, the Saudis, we're going to put them right in line or whatever. And then as soon as they get in power, somebody explains to them just how much American debt they hold or whatever it is. And they
absolutely. Yeah. And then
remember Trump said,
and it's been forever.
Trump was bragging, well, Saudi agreed to buy $400 billion worth of weapons from us. Like, yeah, over the next 40 years they did. Give me a break, dude. Like, the American economy is dependent on Saudi arms sales for their army that they're afraid to even build because they know it'll overthrow them in an instant if they do.
If the Saudis didn't have Pakistani and Filipino serf labor, they could not function as a society.
Yeah. Man, you know what? You reminded me about when you mentioned the Horn of Africa there. Now, it was W. Bush that started America's longest war in Somalia, which is being escalated right now. We've been bombing the crap out of them. Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com is the only one in America who's covering this on a regular basis. Been bombing them all week this week, in fact, and they're claiming some successes against al-Shabaab leadership and all that. I wrote in Enough Already, I have a chapter on Somalia and how W. Bush started this war in December 2001. And people can find that actually on antiwar.com. We've reprinted that entire chapter at antiwar.com. If you just search my name and another failed 20-year war, America and Somalia, that'll come up for you at antiwar.com. Maybe we'll put that in the show notes for you. And that gives the background of that thing. And it's still going on to this day. But then, as you mentioned, across the Gulf there, it was Barack Obama that kicked off first the Yemen war, the drone war, CIA war against al-Qaeda in 2009, but then in 2015, switching sides and taking al-Qaeda's side and Saudi's side against the Shiite Houthis there in the north of the country, and a much worse war that ran from the last 2 years of Obama all the way through all 4 years of Trump 1 and about the first year or so of Biden before they finally brought that one to an end. And you know what? I just don't remember now. I'm blanking on if I covered
They
this.
brought the Yemen war to an end, did you?
Yeah. I mean, well, Israel started it again, but yeah, they negotiated basically the Saudis gave up on the war in the first year of Biden because the Houthis kept reaching out and touching their oil refineries and they
Yeah.
couldn't do a damn thing about it. And they said somebody in a white robe came to Mohammed bin Salman and said, enough of this. And he said, okay, and stopped. And that was what happened. Saudi lost.
You bring up a great point, Scott, and that's this. There's a concept called revolutions in military affairs, an RMA. And what an RMA is, it's the emergence of the stirrup. It's the emergence of smokeless powder. It's the emergence of rifles and pistols and firearms, which pretty much took the whole concept of single combat and close combat, which warriors had been fighting for thousands of years, to a close. The RMA now, and you're pointing this out, is that when it comes to Yemen, Yemen has, I think they've taken out 24 large UAVs, Predators and such, with the technology that they've gotten from Iran and by extension, the BRICS countries and such. There's a democratization flattening of the ability of fourth, third world and developing countries to fight large, exquisite platform-equipped peer countries like the US and the West that has instantiated itself now in the 21st century. Carriers aren't safe.
Yep.
Large UAVs aren't safe. None of this stuff is safe. As a matter of fact, my last War Notes episode, I proposed an interesting thought experiment. I said, since America is an expeditionary war power, because we don't fight here, we always fight elsewhere, what would happen if the enemy or threat that we fought, the country that we landed in, or the country that we landed near, they didn't target a single fighter, ship, soldier, or anything. But every time we spooled up portable power or generator sets, they killed it. What would American fighting power look like if they had no portable power? I can tell you from my experience, they can't fight. So there are ways here, again, asymmetric warfare, trying to leverage advantage in a way that the more expensive and apparently better trained foe did not anticipate.
Right. Look at right now. I mean, you got the drone wars going on in Ukraine, where America's frontline Abrams battle tank has been rendered completely obsolete. We already know if we fight the Russian Federation, our Abrams tanks are no good. We got to use something else. I mean, what in the hell does that mean? I like to think, I mean, first of all, just come home from Europe. I don't give a damn. But all other things being equal, you would think that maybe in the army, they'd be panicking and saying, holy crap, you know, maybe we need to think harder about how else to go about these sorts of conflicts, because we just found out everything that we've been, practicing for the last 60 years or what, 80 years, in Europe about how we would handle a war with the Russians is now obsolete.
God, in order for them to panic, you would have to have the martial and intellectual imagination in that oddly shaped building called the Pentagon to even anticipate this, and they can't, and they don't, and they're simply running around blindly. They're doing this.
You reminded me in the book, I got Ukrainian soldiers complaining that they go to Germany for training. And they go, yeah, but there's no drones in this training, and drones are everything on the battlefield now. So we got to incorporate drones into the thing. And it's like a movie or a sitcom on TV or whatever. And they all go, yeah, well, we're not approved for that. And so you're going to have to fill out some paperwork and talk to 10 different people to approve it. Actually, I saw a thing on YouTube where the Brits invented the cockeyed landing for planes on aircraft carriers so that they don't have to crash into the planes parked at the end of the thing if they miss their catapult. And they were shouted down. The guys who figured this out, we could just put a crooked little landing zone on there. They got shouted down because of the bureaucracy, didn't want to be told they were wrong. And then when the Brits came and told the Americans were like, no way, and demand a year of testing. This is in the middle of the Korean War. They're losing pilots like crazy. But they were, and the Brits are telling them, listen, man, your carriers were designed for these very slow moving propeller planes. But now you're landing jets on them much faster with much less room for error. And your pilots are crashing into these solid steel barricades and dying. All you got to do is pitch your runway crooked. And they're like, no, we hate crooked runways. That's never going to work. And it's like Yes Minister or something. You know, it's like a sitcom. This is how you run your military? Really?
Can I say, you just mentioned Yes Minister. Anybody listening right now, whether you watch the older version in the 1980s or the newer one, Scott, I'm assuming you've seen.
Is there a newer one?
I think there is.
Oh, right.
If you want to see how government works, it's better than a documentary when you watch Yes Minister.
Yeah.
It really is. So those in the audience who have never taken the time to look at that series, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's Public Choice Theory, the sitcom, right? That's what it is. You can call it that, but then everybody be like, Public Choice Theory? What does that mean? It's so non-self-explanatory.
James Buchanan is the expositor, maybe the discoverer of public choice theory. But what all it assumes is that public people, government people, don't act in a altruistic fashion. They act in a selfish fashion. And the best explanation I've seen for public choice theory, Scott, is it's politics as romance.
Oh, that's funny.
That's what it is.
I need to read his books and stuff, man. I'm always like kind of mouthing off about this stuff, but
I think Liberty Fund has a 20-volume set of Buchanan.
Wow. Okay, I'm not going to read that.
He's almost as prolific as you.
Yeah, well, I got 3.5 books to my credit so far. We'll see.
Your books are twice as large as normal books.
Yeah. I regret to inform you that I am actually now working on another book. I won't tell you too much about it, but I sort of can't help myself at this point, I guess. Well, look, we better wrap. I don't want to ask too many great questions and spoil your great course, and I can feel them bubbling up here. So let me recommend to all of the people, if you like hearing me talk about things and you like hearing Bill Buppert talk about things, man, you're going to want to sign up for the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom. And yes, I hope for those with the attuned ears, you will notice that is a homage to the great Dr. Ron Paul's book, the collection of his speeches, A Foreign Policy of Freedom. And so kind of riffing off of that a little bit. Thought it was a pretty good name for a thing. And it's me, Jim Bovard, Ramsey Baroud, and both of their courses are just also absolutely fantastic. The great Bill Buppert coming soon. More of me, CJ Kilmer, Adam Francisco, and many more great courses at the Scott Horton Academy of Foreign Policy and Freedom. And then also don't forget to check out Bill's great podcasts, Chasing Ghosts and War Notes as well. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. And apologies to everybody for my capacious forehead reflecting light in the fashion that it does.
Yeah, we're going to have what was the adjective again?
Capacious.
Capacious. I got one of those too, I think. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but
you do. We do.
I started Kyle's show last week. I was like, man, I'm sorry for being so bald. But anyway, you can ask me questions if you want.
In the Army, I was what was referred to as a buckethead. So
yeah, when I was a boy, my friend Toby at the skate park, he'd come up to me and he'd go, and then he'd wipe my forehead, and then he'd go and do his hair in the mirror.
Oh, we can't leave without me saying this.
Tony and trait.
I'll bet that Scott and I are the only ones at the Libertarian Institute who both have ridden pools on skateboards.
That's true. Yes, Jim Bovard is not a pool skater, although he could have been. I bet he's a tough dude. And Ramsey too. Like if he started young enough. Do you still ride at all, by the way?
Oh no, not at all. No, I do other things.
Because I do have a couple of vert ramps I could bring you along, and we can...
you and I have talked offline about visiting, and we're going to do that. Whether I come there or you come visit me, and there's lots of other hobbies you and I are going to leverage.
Yeah, I do come to Florida now and again. I got people there, so maybe we'll work that out. Anyway, I'm looking forward to your next courses. Thank you so much again for being part of the Academy, man.
It is my pleasure, my honor, and thank you, Scott.
The Scott Horton Show is brought to you by Roberts & Roberts Brokerage, Inc., Mundo's Artisan Coffee, Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom, APS Radio News, and Dissident Media. Subscribe to the show at scotthorton.org, scotthortonshow.com, libertarianinstitute.org, youtube.com/Scott Horton Show, iTunes, Spotify, etc. And check out my books, Fool's Errand, Enough Already, and my latest, Provoked, How Washington Started the New Cold War with Russia and the Catastrophe in Ukraine, at amazon.com. And I'm serializing the audiobook of Provoked at scotthortonshow.com and patreon.com/Scott Horton Show. See you next time.